class.
Today's daf we're going to be learning is Menachot daf Tzadi Tet. Today's daf is sponsored by the Hadron women of Long Island in honor of the birth of a granddaughter to our friend and co-learner Leah and Menachem Brick. May the new arrival grow the Torah, u'ledaf, l'kupa, l'masim tovim, and be a source of joy and pride to the entire Jewish nation. Mazal tov. Okay. A few announcements. So, first of all, I forgot to mention, but it went up kind of late after we learned it in the daf, but the whole idea about the Shulchan shel Adam and the importance of the table of the person that it kind of takes the place of the Mizbech. So there's a shir by Rabbi Iyar Shimoni of Gefet that went up, really going into different opinions about what that means and the importance of the Shulchan. So it's a nice shir to listen to, important concepts. Secondly, the siyum. We have a siyum planned for April 30th. Okay, just to clarify, May 1st is supposed to be the last day, the last daf, so we will not be learning on, that's a Friday. We'll not be learning on Friday. We will learn the last daf on Thursday. So anyone coming to the siyum, if you want to finish and you're up to date, so obviously you can come if you're not up to date, if you don't have to finish with everyone. Anyone's invited even if you don't learn the daf. But we're going to have the siyum on Thursday, so you'll learn Thursday's daf in the morning or before the siyum at some point, and then we'll have the siyum at night Israel time, which is daytime, or depending on what time of day it is by you. We'll have Dr. Alana Steinhain will be teaching about the big overview. Alana's always the overview. Let's do a zoom out called Rolling in the Dough, and about really the concepts of Menachot and the importance of it. And we're going to hear from one of our learners. So we're looking forward. That will be the siyum. And the information went out. You need to register for your Zoom link. And right now, we don't really have siyumim planned around. It could be some groups will put together a siyum. But today, this time, because of the war and all that, we basically decided to go on an all Zoom format, both in English and in Hebrew for right now. The Hebrew siyum will happen on Friday morning. So if anybody wants to join that, we have Ma ben Zevach lemincha as the shiur of Shulam Shvut, which will be about difference between Zvachim and Menachot. So that'll also be interesting. So looking forward. Okay, now we are going to start with the opinion about Tzafon Darom. Okay, and Mizrach Ma'arav. So we talked about which direction were the tables facing, and also the menorah, but because we're on the tables, which direction did they face, right? And whatever opinion you go by, is the Shulchan and the menorah. Were they going east-west, which match what we saw in the Mishnah, that all the kelim that go, right, they go in the direction of the length of the room, meaning that they go east-west, other than the Aron, but there was another opinion that they also go north-south. And then we had a difficulty on the north-south. This time we're going to have a difficulty on the east-west. Bishlama de Amar Tzafon Darom Shapir. Ela, so now Tzafon Darom makes sense. We're going to see why in a minute. Ela, Lamanda Amar Mizrach Ma'arav, we're going to have a bit of a problem. Okay, and now we're going to look at the picture, even though the picture kind of answers the question already, but I want to show you the picture so that we understand what we're talking about. Somehow my picture got closed, so give me a minute. Okay, I'll try to do this till today. So, one second. So now we're going to have the picture here of all the Menorot and Shulchanot in the room. Okay, now, the way we described it yesterday, it sounded like there were two rows of the tables, and the one of Moshe was smack in the middle. Okay, now you see, we talked about this yesterday, that in this picture, the one of Moshe is all the way on the side up against the Parochet. And that's going to be according to the answer the Gemara is going to answer. But at this point, they think that perhaps it was smack in the middle. Now, if it's smack in the middle, what you really need is, you need to count the dimensions of the room. Remember, the width of the room is 20 amot. And the midpoint is at the 10 amot, obviously. And the Shulchan has to be on the northern side. It can't jut into the southern side at all, not all of the 10, or 11 tables. So they're going to say, if you do it Tzafon Darom, it can make sense, because you can have two rows with the one of Moshe in the middle, and there's plenty of space, because if you line them up, right, going north-south, so here we're on the north side, so we'll start going north-south, you'll have 5. Remember, that's fine, because each one is 2 cubits. You can even have some space in between. Then you have one in the middle, then you have another one, and there's plenty of room. But, and that's because it doesn't go, remember, it also has to start from the midpoint in the room of 20, so it really needs to fit into the space of 20 by 20, but there's plenty of room, because you've got the short side juts out, into the center of the room going to the east side. But if you say Mizrach Ma'arav, you're going to have a problem. Why? Michti shulchan kama mashuch min hakotel. Okay, so first of all, you see these two kohanim here? So these two kohanim need space to walk around. Okay, we're going to have two kohanim taking the breads off. We're going to have the breads and the frankincense, and then you have two kohanim putting them on. And they're going to stand on the other side. We're going to get to that later today. But basically, you have two people who are going to have to get into this space on the northern side in between the wall and the shulchan. So in order to have a space for people to walk, you need 2.5 cubits. That's just a normal, typical space of fitting two people in a space. Usually one person, it's 1 amma. That's what we talked about. The mizbeach has that space around. We counted the dimensions the other day. It was 1 cubit. But if two people, you need space for the two of them, 2, and then a little space in between, so that's half an amma. So you need basically 2 amot v'mechzeh, and we saw that also with the aron. Remember, that's why the badim went on the side, right, on the perpendicular to the length of the aron, as opposed to parallel, because then there wouldn't be enough space. And it was actually, the aron is 2.5 width, so that's what you end up the space in between. So if you start doing the math, okay, you have 2.5 cubits of space, and then the shulchan takes up the width, because it's only the width here, because the way they're going north-south, and they're going east-west, and we're walking north-south, so it takes up 1 cubit. So every row is going to take up 2.5 cubits, because you're going to go like this: space, shulchan. 3.5 cubits. 2.5 plus the 1. Then you're going to have space, shulchan of Moshe, space, shulchan, second row. Okay, or third row in this case, but the 2 rows of the 10. So basically, I'm going to read it inside. But michti shulchan kama mashuk min hakotel. How much is it away from the kotel? Shtei amot v'mechzeh. 2.5 cubits. Ve'amadidei, and the amav itself. Then you need another shtei amot v'mechzeh de bene. Then you need another 2 to get to the next row where Moshe's table is going to be. Ve'ama, and another amma. So each one 3.5, 3.5, because you count the 2.5 plus the 1. And then another shtei amot v'mechzeh de bene ve'ama didei. Then you're going to need 2.5 more. 2.5 more between the shulchan and Moshe to the next row until you get to the end of the row of the shulchan. Now, if you do 3.5 times 3, what do you get to? 10.5. Now you have a problem because the room is 20 and you have to get to the 10 amma, but these shulchanot are going to be half an amma into the other room, right? To the other side of the room. It's going to extend a cubit into the other side of the room. Okay, everyone understood that? Because we have 2.5 plus 1. That's 3.5. Times 3, because every time you're going to need space, table, space, table, space, table. So that doesn't make any sense. Again, if they're going north-south, you don't have the problem, because you don't have to measure, right? You have they're taking up, there's less space going, right? I'm just thinking for a second. Right, maybe then right. The issue there is if you go half an amma into you actually would have the same space issue. But if you go, even though it has to be in a 10 by 10, if you're a little bit by half an amma into the room, right, into in the entry part of the room, that's not as big a deal as going over to the south side. I guess that's why. So anyway, they say, wait a minute. Mi savart shulchan de Moshe b'hadayu havayativ? Lo. Now, who's to say it's row, space, right, space, row, space, Moshe's shulchan, space, row of 5, right? Who's to say it's like that? Who says it was right in the middle there? Lo, de midlay, lay umanachle. It was all the way over to the side. And if you notice, the way it is in this picture is the shulchan is actually smack in, right, it basically it's off to the side, so you don't need space to walk in between the row to Moshe's and then from Moshe's to the other one. What happens is, all you need is the space between the 2 rows of the 5, which is 2.5. And then you basically go to the space where there's no table at all, and you walk over there, and right, that's much closer. It's closer to the Parochet. It's not opposite the other tables. So once it's not opposite, you basically cut out that whole 3.5 cubits, and you're basically going to have, starting from the wall, 2.5, table 1, so that's 3.5, space 2.5, table 3, table 1. So you end up with 3.5 plus 3.5, 7. So the Shulchan is going to end, right? The second row of Shulchan is going to end 7 cubits away from the wall, which is completely fine. You're still 3 cubits away from the middle point of the room. And that works totally fine. So now we don't have a problem, right? Now, in case you didn't understand it, they try to describe it in words. They say, this is like a table. Sorry, I was trying to do this better, but okay. I wanted to just erase this circle here. Okay. This is like a table this is like the students before the rabbi. If you look at the 10 tables, it's actually a nice image because it's a table, right? It's like all the students are at their tables, and then there's the rabbi's table, right? So that's the way you can understand this as the best kind of image, which is one, right? The teacher always stands in the front of the room. There's nobody next to him, right? Everybody's beyond him. And that's exactly how the table was. Some people even say that the floor was higher there, that the floor was angled down, and as the highest spot was near the Parochet, and that the rabbi was even kind of higher up. And that's how they often had it in those days, that the rabbi was a kind of more on a pedestal type of thing, and then the students were lower down. And that's also. But either way, the main point for our purposes is that the Shulchan is in its own separate space, and then you have no issue, the Shulchan of Moshe. Okay, now we get to another Braita, and this actually is going to be very similar to the next Mishnah, but they're bringing it because we talked about the 10 tables, but it's really going to cover the next Mishnah, so some of the stuff is going to repeat itself. Asara shulchanot asa Shlomo, v'lo hayu mesadrin ela al shel Moshe. Now the 10 tables that Shlomo made, they only put bread on Moshe's table. The other ones were decorative, for decorative purposes only. How do we know this? Shenemal, ve'et hashulchan asher alav lechem hapanim zahav. Okay, now this is a description in Divrei Yamim, okay, during the time of the first temple. Now I want you to just look at the picture for a minute and tell me if this picture matches what we just said. Okay, look at the picture. Okay, notice there's bread on all the tables. And look at the menorah. Notice even the way they did it, the Kohen is lighting the menorah that's in the front of the room, okay, not the menorah of Moshe's. So that's just interesting in of itself, but you'll see why in a minute, because there's a machloket. Okay, so the Asara Shulchanot, they didn't put any bread on them. They only put on the one Shulchan of Moshe, Shenemal, the Shulchan asher alav lechem hapanim zahav. And it says it in singular. The table that the bread was on it, the showbread was on it, was gold. And it just says the table that the bread was on, singular. Eser menorot asa Shlomo. They continue now. Same thing about the menorot. There were 10 menorot. The Shlomo made, v'lo hayu madlikim. They didn't light them. Ela Shlomo b'shel Moshe. Right? Think about it. They put lechem hapanim on all those tables. That was a lot of bread, right, to make. Because remember, they were all really big, and right, think about how many breads. That's a lot. Same thing it says in Divrei Yamim, the menorat zahav, the one golden one, and its candles, right, leva'er ba'erev, were burning every night. But Rabbi Lazar ben Shamuel Omer, I already told you there's going to be another opinion. Al kulam hayu mesadrin. What do you mean? They did it on all of them. Shenemal, and now he quotes a different pasuk from a different chapter in Chronicles, Divrei Yamim. Et hashulchanot, plural, ve'aleihem lechem hapanim, and on them was the lechem hapanim. Ubekulam hayu madlikim, shenemar, et hamenorot, plural, menorot, ve'nerotehem, and their candles, meaning of all the menorot. Leva'aram kimishpat lefnei advir zahav sagul. So now comes Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, and he says, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer, lo hayu mesadrin ela al shel Moshe. He says, I agree with Tannaic. Okay, only on Moshe. So what do I do with the pasuk though? He comes and tells you, elamani mekayem ve'et hashulchanot asher alehem lechem hapanim zahav. Elu shlosha shulchanot shayu b'mikdash. Those are 3 tables. Okay, not the 10 tables of Shlomo plus Moshe's. No, it was the table of Moshe and 2 other tables. And that's what they're talking about. And now we're going to learn something else. There were these 3 tables. This is also going to appear in the next Mishnah. But I want to show you in terms of the structure. This is only here because we start bringing the psukim, and what does he do with the other one's pasuk? Okay, so we say, oh, that's referring to these 3 tables. Okay, for this purpose, I'm going to pull up the map. Okay, the map of the Beit HaMikdash. Now, in the map of the Beit HaMikdash, we're going to see these tables. Okay, couldn't find a good picture of them, but you're going to see them in these tables. Shnayim shayu ba'ulam mibifnim lepetach habayit. Okay, before I show you this, I actually wanted to show you another picture because I think seeing these pictures is really helpful. Here's a picture of the outside of this is the azara, basically, that we always talk about. It's nice to see a picture visually and see what it's like. Here's the big mizbeach outside. Okay, there's the part that we call bein ulam lemizbeach, and there are the steps. They lead up to the ulam, okay, which you go into the ulam, and then from there you go into the hechal. Okay, although something's weird about this picture because the ulam was wider and the hechal was narrower, so I'm not really sure why this picture is showing it like this. That's a good question. I don't know. But basically, when you walk into this ulam, there's something definitely weird about this picture. Okay, I'm going to have to figure out why this picture looks like that. The ulam was very wide and then the hechal was narrower, but just so you envision that, this idea, there's this open courtyard and within it there's a building, right? The hechal in the map, you don't see that. It just looks like in the map, kind of looks like everything's the same, right? I mean, they do make it black here, but you don't really envision that it's a covered space, okay, and that this is all open. So I just want you to remember that. Anyway, you walk into the ulam, which is this very long, right? It's a long, the length is long, the width is very short, but the length of the room is very long, going out right to your left and to your right. And in there, you see it says here, okay, gold table it says, and I just want to write here, how do I do this? It's showing me what I want. I'm stuck here. Okay, it's not letting me move. Okay, but anyway, you're going to have the gold table is here, and the marble table is here. Okay, so you basically have a gold table and a marble table. What's this gold table and marble table? We're going to see right now. And not only that, we're going to see it's not even called a marble table here. So just to confuse you. So it says here, so elu shlosha shulchanot shayu b'mikdash, shnayim shayu ba'ulam mibifnim lepetach habayit. So 2 were in this ulam, which was this hallway area that led to the hechal. Again, it was covered, right? Where the azara was open, you walk into this covered space. There's a hallway area, and in there's 2 tables. Echad shel kesef, echad shel zahav. One is silver, and one is gold. Now, why do they call it marble? Because you're going to see in the next Mishnah, they call it marble. And some people say they just called it gold, right? Silver, sorry, Rashi says it here. B'matnitin shayish mishum de shayish laban ki kesef. They say shayish marble is light or white like silver. Somehow they think that's why. Anyway, it's probably a girsa problem. Like it was a difference whether it was gold or whether it was silver. I'm sorry, whether it was silver or whether it was marble. But now we're going to see what the purpose of this was. Al shel kesef noten lechem hapanim b'knisato. On the silver one or the marble one, they would put the lechem hapanim as they were walking in. Rashi says they did it kedei lafush. They needed to rest a little bit. Okay, some people also say that it cooled it down. That's why marble makes the most sense, because marble usually stays cold, and it cooled the breads down before they went inside. Or they just got tired. They were carrying a lot of breads. It was very heavy, and they just got tired, and they put it down. Okay, so on the way into the Eichal, remember they're walking in to put it on the Shulchan, they put it down there. What about the one of Zahav? And now they explain why it's specifically Zahav and why you can't just use the same table. Well, Shemalim bekodesh v'lo moridin. That's a very famous line, and today we're going to see the source for it. Because we always go up in sanctity, we never lower the sanctity. If it was already on the golden table inside, so when they take it out, remember on Shabbat, they would switch it. You see in the Mishnah how exactly they did that. This is the Mishnah we're going to get to next. But once it was on a gold table, you can't put it back on a silver table or a marble table. It's not mechubad, it was already not respectful, it was already on gold, so we're going to put it on gold. Echad shel zahav bifnim. So now, this was all with the 3 tables. Remember, it's plural. So we have those 2, plus obviously the golden table of Moshe, sha'alav lechem hapanim tamid. So all these tables had bread on them. Now, some just for a moment, but those were the tables that they were talking about that had bread, according to this other opinion. So we have 2 ways to read that pasuk. One is it was all the 11 tables inside, and they weren't referring to those other 2 tables. Not that they don't think they were tables, they just don't think it was referring to that. Because the pasuk sounds like it's talking about where the lechem hapanim was. Oh, they always put the showbread every week on those 11 tables. But the other opinion says, no. There were 3 tables that at some point held the lechem hapanim. One where it would be there all week long, and the others on the way in and on the way out, temporarily, for a minute, for 2 minutes, we don't know how long, but they were on that table. Umenalan de'e moridin. Now they want to know, okay, where do we get this concept now that we finished that source? Where do we get this concept that malim bekodesh v'lo moridin? We're going to have 2 different psukim. Amar Rebbe, Amar Kha. Vayakem Moshe et Mishkan. He put up the Mishkan. Vayiten et Adana. Vayasem et Kasha. Vayiten et Bricha. Vayitem et Amudav. Okay, these are all the technical parts of the building, right? Like the beams and the screws and all those parts he put in. And the pasuk ends with Vayakem et Amudav. Okay, it says he put Adanim, he put the Krashim, he put the Brichim, and then it says Vayakem, and then it goes back to that word they started with. It started with Vayakem. He established it. Then they go back and end with the same kind of word. So Rashi says that's where we get Malim B'Kodesh for moridin. They wanted to use a nicer word to say, we go up in sanctity. That's one possibility. It's not the most convincing. Rashi brings actually two other interpretations. We'll bring one more. He says the fact that Moshe did all this, right? This is like the technical part of the beams and the base of it, the sockets. Someone else could have done that. But no, since Moshe started, Vayakem et HaMishkan, then he continued, and he didn't let anyone else do it because it wouldn't be respectful if Moshe starts and then other people continue. And that's possibly the other, way of understanding where we get it from this pasuk. That's one source. Okay, so that's how do we know moridin? Sorry, that's how we know that you don't go down in sanctity. But how do you know that ma'alin, that you go up in sanctity? Amar Rabbi Acha bar Yaakov da'amar ka et machtot ha'chataim ha'ele benafshotam. V'asuotam riku'ei pachim tzipui l'nizbech ki yikrivum l'fnei Hashem v'yikdashu v'yu la'ot l'bnei Israel. Let's explain the pasuk first, and then we're going to see how this shows that you go up in sanctity. So this is in the Korach story. If you remember, there was this showdown with Moshe and Korach, and basically they brought their fire, right? And then it was the whole thing about they brought their pans to show that God was with Moshe. And then it says their pans that they used, this is Korach and his people, which they were not good people, and yet since they used them for worship, so they took them and they made them they turned the pans into beaten plates, and they put them as a covering to the mizbeach. Okay, so what do you see here? What's the right? It says in the pasuk they're supposed to be an ot lebnei Israel. They wanted Bnei Israel to always see it and remember the Korach story and remember, God's presence there and who God sided with. But comes the Gemara and says, "B'tchilat tashmishem mizbeach, v'achshav gufo shel mizbeach." Originally, they were something used alongside serving the altar. Right? They didn't use them on the altar, they weren't as part of the altar. But now they became actually part of the altar. So from there you see it went up in sanctity because it actually turned into something that became part of the altar. Now, if we're already on this topic of Malim B'Kodesh V'lo Moridin, they talk about something else. Okay, the fact that things don't go down in sanctity, and they use the broken tablets as an example. Asher shibarta v'samtim ba'aron. Okay, they're quoting this part of the pasuk. Let's read the whole pasuk, very famous pasuk. God says to Moshe, Echtov al haluchot. I'm going to write on the second luchot now. Et hadvarim asher hayu al haluchot harishonim. I'm going to put right on the second tablets exactly what was on the first tablets. Asher shibarta, that you broke. Okay, now, right? Why is God reminding Moshe? He could have just said they were on the first ones. Everyone knows they were broken, but it says Asher shibarta. And then it says v'samtam ba'aron. And we're going to put them in the aron. Now, what would you think samtam ba'aron? What's going to go in the aron? The new luchot. Right? That's what it sounds like. But the drasha is that since it says the luchot that you broke, and you're going to put them in the aron, that the broken tablets go in the aron. And why is that? Because once they were sanctified, right, you don't lower them and throw them out, right? But they actually malim b'kodesh. Okay, they went up in sanctity and got put in the aron. So we're going to see right now, Tani Rav Yosef, Melamed shel luchot v'shivrei luchot munachim ba'aron. Okay, the luchot and the broken luchot were in the aron. Now, Mikan comes Rav Yosef, and I didn't catch this before, I wasn't paying attention, but in the previous class in Hebrew, so someone pointed this out, which was obvious, which is Mikan. Remember Rav Yosef. Who's Rav Yosef? He's the one who often forgets things. He forgot a lot in his old age, and Abaye always reminds him, his student. So what does he say? Mikan tamid chacham sheshachach tamudo machmat unso. He says from here you learn about tamid chacham who lost his Torah because he was forced, meaning old age. He started forgetting his Torah. She'ein nohagim bo minhag bizayon. You don't disgrace him, okay? You have to treat him like a Talmid Chacham, even though he's no longer anymore. Same way we treated the broken luchot. Okay, we're going to have a lot of analogies today from what we're learning to Limud Torah. Okay, so this is one of them, and now we're going to go off on a tangent about this, about the importance of not forgetting your Torah on some other issues. There's the siman for the 3 sugiyot we're going to learn, bitel, sarach, and shachach. Okay, so, Amar Rish Lakish. The first thing is bitel, and that's going to have to do with the luchot that were broken. Pa'amim, turning now to Amud Bet, shebitulat shel Torah zehu yisuda. Sometimes actually canceling or nullifying something, Torah, is actually establishing it. What does that mean? Where do we learn it from? Dichtiv asher shibarta. Another drasha on asher shibarta. It's very famous. That why asher shibarta? You could have just said the luchot shibarta. Why asher shibarta? It's read a little differently. Amar lo kadosh baruch hu Moshe yasher kochecha shibarta. Asher is God. The word asher, la asher in Hebrew means to approve, and yasher is from yasher koch. Right. So God said to him, yasher koch, what you did. It was good that you broke the luchot because it reestablished the Torah. Okay, why? So Rashi says the fact that God said it without anger, right? It shows that God agreed with what he did. He said it was good what you did, that you broke them. And then the reason could be because, first of all, some people say because it enabled the second ones to be written, but the first ones were still there, but maybe the first ones were kind of accepted by the people in sin and it wasn't good, so they needed new ones. Or it could be also, it set an example. It shook up the people and got them to realize, whoa, we really sinned, and then it brought them back to Torah. So sometimes you could nullify Torah by breaking the tablets, and that actually is a positive thing. That was the first statement. The second statement, Amar Rish Lakish. Okay, these are 3 statements, all by Rish Lakish. Amar Rish Lakish, this is Sarach. Tamich Chacham Sarach. Okay, if he leaves the path, okay, but he was a Tamich Chacham originally, Ein Mivazim Oto B'Farhesia. We don't disgrace him in public. Shene'emal v'chashalta hayom. This is in Hosea. Chashalta hayom v'chashal gam navi imcha laila. Okay, if you're gonna v'chashalta hayom, you're going to fail. And if the Navi also fails with you, Laila, at night. Okay, what's this connection of the failing of the Navi at nighttime? Kasehu Kalaila. If the Navi fails, then cover him like night. In other words, hide, right? Don't humiliate him in public. V'amar Rish Lakish, third thing. Kol ha'meshakech davar echad mitalmudo over belav. If you forget, now, meshakech is not lishkach. Lishkach is to forget. Mishakech is you create a situation where you forget the Torah. You decide to forget the Torah. Okay, don't worry. I know we all learn Daf Yomi and we forget a lot of what we learn, myself included. That's not what we're talking about, okay? And the Gemara is even going to specify that, okay? But it means that you take it out of your, right? You say, I don't want to learn this anymore. You make yourself forget. Over belav. Even if you just make yourself forget one thing, you transgress a negative prohibition. Okay, now I'm going to read you the whole pasuk first because we're going to do in different stages. We're going to take different parts of this pasuk. The pasuk is in Devarim chapter 4, verse 9, and it says, Rak hishamer lecha. Okay, rak, pay attention to that word, only, or something like that. It's a limiting word. Hishamer lecha, right, observe for yourself, be careful, or ushmor nafshecha ma'od, kind of the same way of saying it, and watch yourself very much. Pen tishkach et hadvarim asher ra'u einecha, that you don't, lest you forget all the things that your eyes saw. We're talking about it at Har Sinai. And we got the Torah. Upen yasurim b'levavchan, so that lest they leave your heart. Kol yemei chayecha, all the days of your life. Odatum levanecha v'lei banecha, and you should pass this down for generations. Very famous pasuk. So comes Rish Lakish and he says, there's a lo taseh. What's the lo taseh? Where do you see don't do something? It doesn't say the word don't. Well, it says hishamer lecha ushmor nafshecha ma'od pen tishkach et hadvarim. Now that's a language of lo taseh. How do we know? Well, at least according to Rabbi Avin, Amar Rabbi Eli. Okay, you said the name of Rabbi Eli. Amar Rabbi Avin, Amar Rabbi Eli. We've seen this a bunch of times. Kol makom shneimar hishamel pen va'al. Okay, all those words. It's not just lo tirtzach, lo tignov. Not just those. Even if it says hishamel or pen or al, eino ela lo taseh. So here it says hishamer lecha ushmor nafshecha ma'od pen tishkach et hadvarim. So that's a negative prohibition. Okay. Ravina Amal, Hishamer upen shnei lavim ninu. He says, forget that. It says Hishamer and it says pen. Those are 2 words. That means you've transgressed 2 negative prohibitions. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak omer b'shlosha lavim. He says there's 3. Because look at the pasuk. Shneimar Hishamer lecha ushmor nafshecha ma'od pen tishkach hadvarim. So this Hishamer, this shmor, and this pen. That's 3 languages, 3 lo tasehs. You can see each one is trying to say, this is quite serious, okay? Don't kind of forget what you learned, on purpose. Now they say, Yachol afilu machmatan. So, what if it was beyond your control, like Rav Yosef was talking about, right? You forget your Torah because you can't help it, right? You get old and you lose your ability to remember things. Talmud Lama, okay, that's not included because it says in the pasuk, again, like I said, we're going to darshan all the different parts of the pasuk, upen yasur milvavecha. What does it mean? You take it out, they're saying, it means you take it out of your heart. But we're talking about someone who specifically says, I want to get rid of this Torah I learned. Not someone who throws off the Torah they learn, and not someone who just forgot it because of old age or something like that. Rabbi Dostai Rabbi Yana Amar, Yachol afilu takfa lav mishnato. Forget about old age. What if I'm just having a hard day and I can't remember what I'm learning and I'm struggling? Okay, we all know those days, right? Rashi says, Shalo Yachol lahami girsato. You just can't make it happen. It's just not working for you. Okay, you're trying to learn. It's just not happening. Talmud Lamar rak. Okay, rak, as I said before, is a word that excludes, meaning not every case of this, okay? If you're just having a hard time focusing and you're not able to get it, or you're forgetting everything you learned because of that, that's not what we're talking about. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Elazar, the Amrit Travayu. Now, the Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar said the following statement, a very beautiful idea. Torah nitnar ba'arba'im. It was given in 40 days, right? Moshe went up to the mountain for 40 days. Uneshama notzra ba'arba'im. And the neshama of a person is created in 40 days. This is basically what we say, that the first 40 days of pregnancy, right? It's not really a neshama yet. On the 40th day, the fetus has a neshama already. What do we learn from this parallel? Kol mishamer torato. If you keep your Torah, nishmato mishtameret, then your soul will be protected. Kol she'eno mishamer Torah, ein nishmato mishtameret. If you don't protect the Torah, though you don't observe it, then your neshama will not be protected either. Basically means you'll end up dying. And we're going to see this right now in a mashal. Tana debei Rabbi Yishmael, mashal la'adam shematzar tzipor dror la'avdo. It's like a mashal to a person who gave a sparrow to his slave and told him to watch it. Amal kemidumata she'yeta ma'abda. What you think I'm giving this to you to watch, and if you don't watch it, I'm going to make you pay me the value of the bird or some small amount of money. Like, you think that's how it works? Like, okay, I give you something to watch. You don't watch it. You'll have to just pay me something? No. I'll kill you if you don't do it, right? I will take your soul away, and that's what God's saying. I'm giving you the Torah, but your job is to protect it and to keep it and to remember it. And if you don't, well, right, if you do, you'll have your neshama. If you don't, you will lose your neshama. Okay, that's right, the negative way of saying what we've been saying. Okay, so we have like the positives here, how important it is to remember your Torah, and how, but if you forget it, right, and you make yourself forget it, then there's negative prohibitions here, and also God will get angry at you, and will take away your soul. Okay, so basically what we did here, just to review this section, and then we're going to go on to the next one, because I want you to distinguish a little, because we're going to have similar things coming up. We started with the north-south. Okay, we figured out, right, the north-south sounded better than the east-west, but then we figured out how the dimensions work with east-west, because the formation of the tables was different than we thought. Then we went to the 10 Shulchanot of Shlomo, because we were already talking about that, and how the room had the 10 plus the 1, and then the whole debate. Do we put the breads and do we light all the candles or not? So we saw two opinions. And then we got to which pasuk, and from the pasukim, we got to this whole issue of, right, the other one said, oh no, there's these other three, right, the tables in plural is not the 11 tables, it's the 3, the real one, and then the other 2, where they put it on just on the way in and on the way out, perhaps just to rest, according to what Rashi says, maybe also to cool them down on the way in anyway. And then we talked about the Ma'alim B'Kodesh, because the whole reason they went on the Zahav on the way out was because you couldn't put them on the Shayish, or the silver one, because you can't bring down. And we said, where do you learn you bring up, and where do you learn you can't bring down? And from there we got to the Luchot, and we got off on a whole tangent about someone who had Torah, lost it, broke it, right? Then the whole idea of, not losing the Torah, and then using this other pasuk to show that there's all these negative, possibly 1, 2, 3 negative prohibitions involved in making yourself forget your Torah. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next Mishnah. I wanted to kind of summarize, and that'll be our summary for, at the end, we'll just summarize the end, but to see we came at it from a different angle, okay? But we're going to get to the same place here as well. And we're again going to make a comparison to Torah, but in a bit of a different direction. Shnei shulchanot hayu ba'olam mibifnim al petach habayit. So now we get to where the Mishnah says what we kind of mentioned as part of that whole, what do you do with the shulchanot? But here it says it in the Mishnah explicitly. There were 2 tables in the Ulam mibifnim by the petach habayit when you go into the heichal. Echad shel shayish ve'echad shel zahav. Here you see it says shayish, marble. One was marble, one was gold. Al shel shayish notnim lechem apanim b'knisato. You put the lechem apanim as you went in. Al shel zahav b'yitziato. Same thing. Shemalim b'kodesh v'lo moridin. Okay, because you go up in sanctity, you never go down. Echad shel zahav mibifnim shalav lechem apanim tamid. And the third was the lechem apanim table. Ba'arba'a kohanim nichnesim. Now we're going to talk about how the whole process happened. So 4 kohanim would come in. Shnayim be'adam shnei starim, ushnayim be'adam shnei bezichim. Okay, 2 carried one, right? Each one 6 breads, the other one 6 breads, and the other one carried the other 2 carried the bezichim. Okay, you got lucky if you got the job of the bezichim rather than carry this little thing rather than carry this 6 breads. And shnayim and arba'am makdimim lifnehem. But wait, 4 people come before them. Shnayim litol mehem shnei starim, shnayim litol shnei bezichim. Because again, you have to take the breads off and take the bezichim off, the bowls of frankincense. Hamachnisim, now they're going to tell you. Hamachnisim omdim mitzafonu pnehem ledarom. That's what we saw in the picture. The ones carrying the breads, they're on the northern side. Now, why are they on the northern side? Because the northern side, meaning they're between the wall and the table. The northern side, remember, shchitatam b'tzafon kodesh kodeshim, the northern side is the holier side. So we want to have the people who are bringing them in, the new ones, to be on the northern side. And they're facing darom. They're basically facing the table and then facing the other wall. Hamotziim umdim darom. Okay, it doesn't really mean in the south. They're not on the south side, but the ones who take it out are on the southern side compared to the ones on the north side, meaning they're on the other side of the table. Okay? And they're looking to the tzafon. Elu moshchim ve'elu minichim. Now, I want to point out that there's a bit of something I couldn't figure out actually how this works. But if they're standing, okay, let's take these kohanim. So they're standing, okay, let's just imagine. It's really there by this table, but you can see this, right, the one all the way inside. But you can see this table better, or I guess depending on the opinion. So they're holding the breads, and they're supposed to put them in. Now, you put them in not north-south, you put them in east-west, because the opening of the table is east-west. So they're standing in the north facing the south, but obviously they have to come around either to the eastern side or the western side to put the breads in and to take the breads out, right? So there's the one standing in the north or here facing that way. I can't get my pencil back. Why can't I get my pencil back? Let's try this. No, it's not working. Okay. Here, draw. Okay. So these guys are facing this way. And the other guys that you don't see in the picture, but they're facing that way. But at some point, they have to come around to this side to basically put the breads in and put the breads out because the snifim are on the sides. You can't slide the breads in that way. So I didn't really figure out why they're not standing east-west, but they're not, okay? So obviously, they're going to have to come a little bit around to the side to slide the breads in and out. So now we're going to have the description of how it happened. And this is a very famous machloket, okay? And we're going to see where they take it to in the Gemara. Hamachnisim omdim tzafon v'motziim omdim there. Elu moshchim ve'elu minichim v'tifcho shel zeh keneged tifcho shel zeh. So first we have the 2 kohanim who are pulling the breads out, and the 2 are taking the bezichei levona off, and then the 2 pulling the breads out. And the other 2 are putting the breads in at the same time. One sliding them out on one side, right on, let's say the west side. They don't say west or east here, but let's say they're sliding them out, toward the east, and then the other ones are putting them in toward the west. We don't know, but one's putting one, right? And as they're sliding in, the other ones are putting as they're sliding them out, the other ones are putting the other ones in. And it says here, the tefach keneged tefach, like they pull out a little and they put in a little. They put out, they put in. What's the whole issue here? Shene'emal, lefanai tamid. The bread always has to be on the table. So you have to figure out how to make sure there's always bread on the table. If you have to take the breads off, well, it's not going to always be bread. So we make sure that's why we have these kohanim pulling out and the kohanim pulling in, and all worked out. Rabbi Yossi Omer, afilu elu nonim ve'elu minichim, afi hayta tamid. Rabbi Yossi says, listen, you can take them out, and the other ones can put them in a minute later. It doesn't really matter. Wait till we get to the Gemara, and we see where he even says more extreme than that. But in the Mishnah, it sounds like he's saying, okay, it doesn't have to be that second, right? It's still that there's bread on the table always, even if for 2 minutes, there's no bread on the table. Yatsu, okay, now they go out. Now we already know what they're going to do. The ones who are carrying the breads out, Nitanum al shulchan zahav sheyabu ulam. We already said they put it on the golden table out there. Hiktiru habizichin, then they burn the bizichin, they burn the frankincense. Hachalot mitchalkot lekohanim, and then you can already divide the chalot by the kohanim. They get divided by the kohanim of the previous mishmar and the new mishmar, because that was the day they switched. And everybody gets a part, although not an even part. That's a whole other Mishnah. Chal Yom Kippurim liyot b'Shabbat. Now we have a problem. What if Yom Kippur is on Shabbat? So what do? They push off the chalukah of the chalot. Hachalot mitchalkot le'erev, because they want to give people bread when it's a day you can't eat bread. Chal liyot be'erev Shabbat. What if Yom Kippur, this is a different issue, not related. It's just since we're already talking about Yom Kippur and the kohanim getting stuff. So what if Yom Kippur happens on Friday? Now that never happens anymore, but in the days before they had a set calendar, it would happen. Se'ir shel Yom Kippurim ne'echal ha'erev. We're not talking about the Se'ir Lashem, that gets completely burnt. The Se'ir Lazazel goes off the cliff, but there's a Se'ir Chatat, like you do on all the holidays. You also do it on Yom Kippur, and that gets eaten that day and that night, the meat. It's a Chatat. Chatat gets eaten by the Kohanim, the meat. So we have a problem, because you can't eat it on Yom Kippur, and you can't cook it on Yom Kippur, and you can't cook it on Shabbat. So what do you do with it? Well, it's eaten at night, but how is it eaten? It was never cooked. Well, okay, the Kohanim of Bavliim, apparently the Babylonians, they were not so particular about food. If you remember, they eat this kut chabavli, which is pretty disgusting, and we always talk about. Well, they obviously didn't care about eating raw meat, and therefore they would give it to those Kohanim to eat, so it would get eaten. It wouldn't be notar, which is, you never want to get to notar. Okay, now we get to the Gemara. Tanya, here's a bright, and here we're going to hear about Rabbi Yossi, and from there we're going to get off onto a sugya about Talmud Torah again. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Afilu sileket hayeshana shacharit v'sideret hachadasha arvit ein bekach klum. He says, you can take them off in the morning, put the new ones on at night, forget about a minute. You could have a whole day. As long as they're on before the sun sets, that's fine. That's still lefanai. Elamani mekayem lefanai tamid. Shelo yalin shulchan b'lo lechem. It shouldn't be ever left overnight without bread. That's what it means. Amar Rabbi Ami midvarav Rabbi Yossi nomod. Afilu lo shana adam ela perek echad shacharit uperek echad arvi kiyei mitzvat lo yamush sefer Torah ze mipicha. Right? Remember that famous pasuk in Yoshua? Yoshua is told in the beginning of Sefer Yoshua, Lo yamush, this Sefer Torah will never leave your mouth. V'hagita bo yomam v'layla. Right, on many shtenders they put that, right? And you should be learning it day and night. How do we understand this day and night? Just like the lechem hapanim. It doesn't have to be the way Rabbi Yossi does. It doesn't have to be there day and night. It means you have to just learn something in the morning and something in the evening, and you will fulfill this commandment. Okay? That's what he says. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. It really should be Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzadak. Okay, often it's Rashbi, and Rashbi people thought was Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, but the printer wrote in Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, but it's not. Okay, it's really Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzadak who was his teacher. Afilu lo kara adam ela kriyat shema shacharit v'arvit kiyem lo yamush. Okay, and he says based on this, forget about learning Torah. Even if you just read Kriyat Shema in the morning, Kriyat Shema in the evening, you fulfilled your mitzvah of lo yamush. But don't tell it to Amei Haaretz, because they're going to say, look, Talmud Torah isn't important at all. But Rava Amar mitzvah lo omro b'fnei Haaretz. What do you mean? If you say that by just doing this in the morning and the night, you get rewarded, all the more so if you really learn Torah, and it will encourage the Amei Haaretz. Right? It's like an interesting approach about people who are not doing things. Do you just say, don't tell them, they'll just be, they'll say, this is nothing, or maybe you should tell them to encourage them to take it seriously. But now we have Sha'al ben Dama ben Achoto. Here we're going to have a totally different approach. Ben Dama was the ben Achoto, who was the nephew of Rabbi Ishmael. Et Rabbi Ishmael. Kegonani shalamadti kol Torah kula. Listen, I learned all the Torah. Okay, whatever that means, right? Can you ever learn the kol Torah? It's kind of what Rabbi Ishmael answers him. Ma'olemo chochma yivanit. Can I learn chochma yivanit? Which could be Greek philosophy. It could be a language. If you remember the whole story with Aristobulus and his brother, and the whole thing with the Chazir, and the guy told him in Chochma Yivanit, and then they said from here you shouldn't learn Chochma Yivanit. Anyway, that seems like it was a language. Whatever it is, can I learn some other, secular studies, so to speak? Kara alava mikraze. He said the following pasuk: Lo yamush sefer Torah ze mipicha v'agita bo yomam v'layla. Say you b'dok sha'a she'ino eina lo min hayom v'lo min halayla u'lemo b'chochma yivanit. Go find a time that's not day, not night, because all the time that's day and night is the opposite approach. You need to be learning Torah. You don't have space for anything else. Go find time that's not day and not night and learn. right? Some people say, oh, maybe Ben Hashmashot or something. It's not definitely night, right? And then you can learn right then. But it seems to be saying no. Upliga de Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, but it disagrees with that. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani. Okay, actually, everything we saw disagrees with him because what does he say? Amar Rabbi Yonatan. Pasuk ze eino lo chova velo mitzvah ela bracha. This pasuk, it's not a mitzvah. It's not a chovah. It's not an obligation. When Yoshua was told this, it was a blessing he was given. It's not a commandment. Ra'ah kadosh baruch hu Yoshua shedivrei Torah. Now they're going to make a connection, a literary connection to a pasuk in the Torah. God saw that Yoshua, divrei Torah chavivim alav biyoter. He loved learning Torah. How do we know that? Shneimar umisharto, the misharet of Moshe, Yoshua ben Nun now, when he was a nar, lo yamish mitoch ha'ol. He would never leave the oil. Look at the word lo yamish and lo yamush. Amar lo kadosh baruch hu Yoshua kol kach chavivim alecha divrei Torah lo yamush sefer Torah ze mipicha. Okay, it was a bracha. Don't take this as this is what you have to do. Right? It says this is what you have to do. So we have three approaches, right? Two main ones. Is this obligatory? Is it not obligatory? Is it a commandment? Is it not a commandment? Within, is it a commandment? What does the commandment mean? Does it mean all day and all night? Or does it mean at some point, just like the lechem apanim machloket? Tana debei Rabbi Yishmael. Divrei Torah lo yu alecha chova. You shouldn't look at them as a burden. Okay, like I have to learn. V'iyah tarashai lif Torah tzmachamehem. But you also can't exempt yourself from them. Right? This sounds like lo alecham lacha ligmor. You don't have to finish it, but lo atati li batel mimenu. Right? But you also can't, say, oh, well, then I won't do it. Okay, it's similar. It's not the same thing, but this is saying don't look at them as a burden, but you also can't exempt yourself from them. Amar Chizkiya, mai dachtiv afis itcha mi pizza rachav lo mutzak tachtea. Okay, this is a pasuk in Iyar, and it says, afis itcha, will turn you away from something narrow, and you will get to something wider, rachav. Okay, without something solid underneath. I don't know exactly how we interpret that, but they say the following. Bo re'esh elok midat HaKadosh Baruch Hu midat basar v'dam. When you say lahasit, usually it means you pull someone away to do something bad. But midat basar v'dam, the way people work, adam misit et chavira midarchei chayim ledarchei mita. They turn you away from the way of life to the way of death by sinning. HaKadosh Baruch Hu misit et ha'adam midarchei mita ledarchei chayim. God seduces you basically to do good. Okay, where it says, he takes you away from the narrow straits. Mi Gehenom, that's a reference to Gehenom. That we're stuck in there. Okay, and God brings you to a more rachav place. Okay, and that's God basically pulls you away to learn Torah. That's the idea, or to do good things. Okay, so with that we finish. So again, the end of the daf basically put to this issue of the three Shulchanot, how the Kohanim brought them in, took them out, and this big famous machloket about what does it mean that they always have to be on the table. Is always, or is always just sometime during the day? And we take that to the Yomam Valayla. You have to learn night and day. And what does that mean? All night, all day, or just one part, right? A little bit. As long as you covered yourself for the day, you've gotten something. So food for thought. And with that, we finish for today. What's nice here is this whole connection between Torah learning and maybe also the idea of Shulchan. Maybe I didn't realize, but by saying the Shulchan Shel Adam Mechapel, right, this is maybe the idea of the significance. You can go listen to Rabbi Iyar Shimoni Shiur, but the idea about the food, right? There's food, which is the lechem, the food of the person, and then there's the food of the soul, which is the Torah. So it's very likely that that's why we keep making these comparisons of the Torah to the lechem. With that, we finish for today. Wishing everyone a good day.